All signs are pointing to this ahead of the Philadelphia 76ers and NBA free agency. It could also have a direct correlation on what the Philadelphia 76ers look to do with their 35th overall pick in the second round in this upcoming NBA draft. After a standout first year, I think we could call it that, or at least, playing above his expectations, it does seem like Gershon Yabusele will be headed out the door from Philadelphia in the upcoming weeks in NBA free agency. It just doesn't look like it's going to be a contract that the Sixers are able to fit into the cards, when especially it seems like re-signing Quentin Grimes is more of the priority. And some people might argue Yabusele might be more of a priority due to being a front court player and the Sixers being more thin in that area of their roster, and they already have a ton of money tied up to a guy like Tyrese Maxey, a potential young budding star in Jared McCain. Is it really worth it to give Quentin Grimes a big contract? I think so, but it does seem like everything is pointing to this. All signs are pointing to this, that the Sixers, if they are only going to be able to keep one of those two players with Quentin Grimes and Gershon Yabusele, it looks like it's going to be Quentin Grimes, and Yabu is going to find his way out the door and probably land himself a pretty handsome contract. Does he find a way to maybe take a little bit of a hometown discount for the Sixers, giving him a second chance in the NBA? Who knows? That still remains to be seen. But with the NBA draft coming up next week and the 76ers having the third pick as of right now, and as well the 35th pick, they have the opportunity to add two young potential players to this rotation coming up next year. And I think the 35th overall pick is a perfect opportunity to potentially get a replacement there for Yabu. It seems like more and more it's going to be VJ Edgecombe most likely at 3. Ace Bailey's still in the conversation, but I do think with that 35th overall pick, they're going to look to add a front court piece. And I think there's two potential intriguing options that the 76ers could draft and help this team immediately next season, but also moving forward down the line as well. Go back to just the initial report of this, where it's saying, this is from the real Mike KB last week, the priority for the Sixers this offseason is re-signing Quentin Grimes. Could result in Yabusele leaving in free agency. Prior to the addition of Grimes at the deadline, returning Yabu might have been considered a top offseason priority, but Grimes is a better fit for Philly, 4 years younger, and projects as an ideal complement alongside Maxey and Jared McCain moving forward. If the Sixers could keep both Grimes and Yabu, they likely would, but that is unlikely. And as I said at the beginning, it just doesn't seem like it's going to be in the cards money-wise to make that happen. So with the 35th overall pick, I think the Sixers have an opportunity to go out there and get another front court player. And what Daryl Morey talked about this offseason, as well as getting younger, getting more athletic. And I think one of these guys certainly fits that description, but another one of these players I think is just a really solid impact player that can help at the NBA level right away. So let's get into these two potential prospects that the 76ers could look to draft to replace Gershon Yabusele next season. The first one we're going to touch on, Eric Dixon. It might be a little bit too early here at 35. You see it in this mock draft on NBA Tankathon. He goes number 43 overall to Utah. He's number 48 on the big board. But I think once you get kind of past that first round, those top 30 prospects, it's kind of, pick your poison with these teams' preferences. You'll see international guys get picked that nobody was talking about, that nobody was looking at. But then you get a guy like Eric Dixon here. It's, the production speaks for itself. We shouldn't let him fall that far down the board. I think he is going to be a guy that, would I be totally surprised if he goes undrafted in next week's draft? No. But I do think that there is going to be a market for him, and there should be a market for him. He was the leading scorer in the country this year in college basketball at Villanova, super senior. This was his 5th year this past year. But he's a player that you saw steadily improve each year after each year at the college level at Villanova. And he had a ton on his shoulders this year. When you look at that Villanova squad, they didn't have many scorers, and he had a ton of eyeballs on him. And not only was he able to score, in the low post, in the mid-range, but also really extended his game out to the three-point line as well. And while defense might not be his specialty, especially early on during his career at Villanova, I think that's where he really struggled the most. You look at his scoring ability and that kind of punch that he could bring off the bench, that toughness, that rebounding as well. I think that's a welcome fit, and kind of look into what Yabu's role was on the Sixers last year. He did provide a lot of scoring, and he did play kind of some undersized 5 if the 76ers want to roll Eric Dixon out there. I think he's strong enough and big enough to contain some of these big men. He's not tall enough or long enough necessarily. He's going to struggle some on the defensive end, but he's a force, and he knows his role and he knows what he does well, and that's a really good scorer. And do I think he's going to be a 15, 20 point per game scorer at the NBA level? No, but I do think he could be a guy that comes off the bench and averages, 10 to 12 points per game and be a really good reserve forward for this Sixers team next year. You look at some of his strengths, kind of all there on the offensive end. Projects as a very good NBA three-point shooter, and as we said, a very good free throw shooter as well. He just knows how to put the ball in the basket. You look at all his strengths there, it's really kind of tied to the offensive side. Struggles more on the defensive end, an older player, already 24 years old, but the production speaks for itself. And sitting there at number 35, I definitely think there's a worse direction you can go in. There's certainly some front court players at the center spot, like a Maxine Raymond from Stanford, or Ryan Kalkbrenner from Creighton, that I think are going to be in the mix there as well. But if those guys are off the board and you're looking to add more so like a pure four and a scoring forward at that, I think Eric Dixon certainly fits the description in that role. I think the Sixers are kind of looking ahead already, kind of in the back of their mind. They know Yabu's not going to be back. This 35th pick is going to be a very key pick. There's some other players at other positions that we've talked about, like an Adu Thiero, that I think would be a great fit as well on this team. A handful of wings that kind of you can mix into the rotation and grow alongside Justin Edwards on the wing for these young wings moving up for the Philadelphia 76ers. But the 4 spot is going to be a spot of need, and I don't know if there's necessarily a guy out there on the free agency market that is going to be able to come in and really help this team from day one, that is going to be able to kind of fill up some of that production left by Yabu. And I really do think Eric Dixon brings the scoring ability to fill that production, the ability to step out and shoot, keep defenses honest as well, but score from all over the floor. So Eric Dixon, I think, is certainly a player that's going to be in the mix for the 76ers at number 35. It's some pretty big shoes to fill. Yabu, you could argue, was their third or fourth best player throughout the season last year. I think, from start to finish, you probably look at Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain in his spurts, Joel Embiid, I don't even regard him from last year, Paul George, kind of the same thing. Kelly Oubre, I thought, had a really nice year last year, but I think you could make an argument Yabu was kind of right in there with like Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes, obviously a smaller sample size, but those are some big shoes to fill, and I think Eric Dixon is a player capable of stepping in and being that kind of eighth guy, in the rotation, and being able to contribute his offensive ability from day one, his toughness. He brings that Villanova mindset, and a local kid as well. He knows what it takes to play in Philadelphia. Another player, this one is more so of a reach. I think Eric Dixon, or excuse me, not more so a reach, more so a guy that would have to fall to the 76ers and potentially, like, if you're in love with him, maybe even look to move up, trade future draft capital, and get into the back half of the first round. But it's another local guy from Camden High School. Eric Dixon comes from Abington. This is Rasheir Fleming out of Camden. He goes to St. Joe's, and I really think if you reversed these two players, no disrespect to Dixon and what he did at the college level, but doing that at Villanova certainly garnered more attention, garnered more eyeballs on him. When you look at a guy like Rasheir Fleming playing in the A-10 at St. Joe's, definitely a more unheralded recruit. He comes out of a high school that's producing 4 and 5 stars. He was in the same class as Aaron Bradshaw and DJ Wagner. He's a much more unheralded recruit, goes to St. Joe's. He works his tail off, and it looks like his best basketball is ahead of him. If you had him on Villanova, I think he's getting a lot more attention. He's a player that I think is really flying under the radar. I've seen some people, they'll hype him up as a potential late lottery pick, but I've seen also some mock drafts him fall to the second round. So like I said, that kind of draft range, after you get out of that top 10, those top 10 prospects that most people consider in terms of a consensus, your draft range is kind of all over. You can see guys fall. I mean, Justin Edwards with the Sixers is a prime example of that last year. He didn't have a great rookie year or freshman year at Kentucky, but he's still projected like a late first-round pick. He winds up going undrafted completely. So you don't really know where these guys are going to go. And I think Rasheir Fleming is a guy that, playing at St. Joe's, some people might disregard that, look past that a little bit and not really consider him as much as they should. But he's a player that is going to be highly productive for years to come. I think his best basketball is ahead of him. And I think he's a good fit for the 76ers at number 35 too, and fits that description of getting younger and getting more athletic for this upcoming season. When you look at him, I think his 3-and-D potential as a 6'9" long wing is something that's very, very intriguing. You look at his combine, he performed really well, 7.5-foot wingspan, really good standing reach in the shuttle, the lane agilities. Max vertical wasn't that great, but still his length, I think, makes up for it, and just overall pure athleticism. A great defender. I think that's going to be the most intriguing thing about him going forward. Definitely a guy that can guard 1 through 4. Going to have to bulk up a little bit, beef up a little bit, I think, but what he brings to the table from day one, 1.5 blocks and 1.4 steals per game, basically, 3.5 stocks. I think that is what they're calling them nowadays. But then the ability to step out and shoot the ball as well. 39% from three this past year on 4.5 attempts per game and 53% from the field. This is a guy that is just going to be a winning basketball player, I think, plain and simple. We know St. Joe's didn't have the greatest season this past year, but Rasheir Fleming's improvement over these past few seasons has been undeniable, and I think would be an awesome fit for this Philadelphia 76ers team. Dare I say, I think it would even be an improvement over Yabu. And while I think it is a bit of a stretch, bit of a reach that he does fall here to 35, if he is, it's a scenario where I think the 76ers have to run up to the podium. And get this guy on their roster. He fits exactly what Daryl Morey was talking about by getting younger, getting more athletic, and a game that is just continuing to grow and continuing to get better. This is a prospect that I'm all over, and I'm going to be rooting for this guy wherever he goes, because this is one of my guys, I'd say, for this upcoming draft class. But I think both Rasheir Fleming and Eric Dixon both have a good chance of being there potentially on the board at number 35 and filling a need for the Sixers. Eric Dixon, more of that offensive void that Yabu is potentially leaving if he does leave in free agency, that ability to score kind of off the bench, also rebound, maybe play some small ball five. Rasheir Fleming, more of that defensive-minded guy, but also a growing and expanding offensive game ability to shoot the ball. But the 76ers need to capitalize on this number 35 pick. They can't just look past it. I don't want them to throw it away, get rid of it. You have to add with these max contract players, with Embiid, with Paul George, with Tyrese Maxey. You have to be able to add these cheap contracts and hit on them. You hit on a guy like Justin Edwards last year. Hopefully the 76ers are able to do that again in the undrafted free agent market, but they need to nail this number 35 overall pick. And without it needing to be said, they need to nail that number 3 overall pick as well, more than they ever had. That scenario has to be nailed, whether it's a trade back, whether it's selecting a guy at number 3. That the right decision has to be made in that scenario. But it's also almost equally as important to get this number 35 pick nailed down as well, and make it sure it's a right draft pick, a correct draft pick. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below at number 35, a specific player that you're looking to eye up, looking to target. Is there a guy on your mind? Are you kind of in the mindset as me, as we got to add a guy in the front court there to replace Yabu? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Draft week almost a week away. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. We will talk next time here on Sixers Digest.